Hello and welcome to your parliamentary program, The Parliament, which deliberates on legislative policies from the chambers of the National Assembly to the voices shaping Nigeria's democratic journey. Welcome once again. I am Anieti Patrick. Each week we bring you the latest decisions, debates and developments from the heart of the legislature, the bills shaping the national policy, the motions addressing citizens' concerns and the oversight actions holding government accountable. On this episode, the Nigerian Senate rejected provisions that would make the electronic transmission of election results mandatory following a tense and rowdy emergency sitting in Abuja. The decision comes amid public outrage and protests over the controversial amendment to the Electoral Act. The Senate convened an emergency plenary on Tuesday to address growing reactions from Nigerians over its passage of the Electoral Act Amendments Bill. At the heart of the controversy was the Senate's decision to remove provisions mandating the real-time electronic transmission of election results. During the sitting, Senate President Godswill Akpabio began proceedings with the consideration and adoption of the votes and proceedings of the last plenary session. Trouble, however, emerged when the Senate arrived at the section of the bill dealing with electronic transmission of results.
Those in support of the motion as enunciated by Senator Monguno and seconded by Senator Pamoro say aye. And those against say nay. The ayes have it.
The Senate Chief Whip, Senator Mohammed Monguno, raised a point of order citing relevant sections of the Senate standing rules to enable the chamber rescind its earlier use of the word transfer, replacing it with electronic transmission. The motion was subjected to a voice vote and approved.
Electronically transmit the results from each polling unit to IREP portal, and such transmission shall be done after the prescribed Form ECHA has been signed and stamped by the presiding officer and or countersigned by the candidates or polling agents where available at the polling unit.
But moments later, the chamber descended into a rowdy session when Senator Einaya Abaribe challenged the outcome, insisting that there was a clear division among lawmakers and calling for a more definite voting process. Despite the protest, Senator Abaribe later withdrew his motion, paving the way for the Senate President to rule on the matter.
Mr. President, I claim a division in respect of we need to vote individually now.
From the outcome of the emergency sitting, the Senate effectively upheld its earlier decision, declining to include the words mandatory and real-time in the provisions for electronic transmission of election results. This means that while electronic transmission remains an option under the amended bill, it will not be compulsory. Another drama unfolded at the National Assembly on Wednesday as the senator representing Kogi Central, Natasha Akpoti-Uduaghan, clashed with the chairman of the Senate Committee on Steel Development, Senator Patrick Nwabueze, during the 2026 budget defense session. Trouble started when the Minister of Steel Development, Tribal Audu, told lawmakers that the proposed 500 million naira capital allocation for 2026 would be grossly inadequate to revive the moribund Ajaokuta Steel Company. The minister disclosed that between $1.5 billion and $2 billion would be required to fully resuscitate the steel complex. He explained the plans for Russian financing suffered setbacks due to the Russia-Ukraine war, which he said disrupted earlier funding expectations.
We are right, in September 2024, we signed an MOU, a Memorandum of Understanding with the OEM, the original equipment manufacturers, basically the guys that built Ajaokuta initially, the TP and the consortium, and like you rightly mentioned. But what we discovered and what we realized several months after the transaction, the MOU had been consummated, was that the Russia-Ukraine war was a big distraction. and it restricted their capacity to be able to fund that transaction. Based on our own in-house analysis and the research and data that we have, the project will need between $1.5 to $2 billion for a revival of Ajaokuta, and the federal government does not have the funding. As you can see, the capital budget for Ajaokuta is around 500 million, and what is required for the revamp is about 3 trillion naira. So there's a massive disconnect. So we have to raise the funding privately. So what we decided to do with the blessing of Mr. President was to pivot. Basically, I had a discussion with Mr. President, put all the facts on the table, and a decision was made for us to pivot to China.
However, Senator Natasha faulted the minister's explanation, insisting that Russia had earmarked $50 billion for Africa's development in 2019, adding that there was an existing memorandum of understanding between former President Muhammadu Buhari and Russian President Vladimir Putin on Ajaokuta.
I'm speaking to myself. I do not want to be a liar.
Yes.
I'm not calling you a liar, but I said the worst thing what exception do you take by me saying I don't want to be a liar?
We should not lie to Nigerians. We are not lying to Nigerians.
Okay, so when did the Ukraine-Russian war start? When did President Buhari meet with Putin, President Putin? That was in, I think, October, November 2019, right? And it was right there. If you can pull the records from the pages of the newspaper,
Yes, but
you will see that it was at that meeting. Hold a second, please. Hold a second. Let me land, please. Let me speak, please. It was at that MOU, it was at that bilateral agreement between President Mohamed Buhari and President Putin in Russia, at Sochi there in Russia, that the 1.45 billion was declared by the Russian government. Exactly. And it was then said that that money will be lodged in Afri-Exim Bank. Of course, it was to be taken out of the 50. Let me speak, please.
No, because your facts are not correct.
Whether it's a different government, there's continuity in ministry. So I do not think that Nigeria's economic plan should not restart every time a government changes. There should be continuity. So you probably had a briefing from the previous minister. Let me get there, please. I'll have to restart again. Each time you stop me or interject, I will restart. So let me flow. In 2019, there was a bilateral agreement entered into in Sochi, Russia, between President Mohamed Buhari, of late blessed memory, and President Putin. And that bilateral agreement, Ajaokuta was, of course, a top focus, and 1.45 billion was pledged by the government. The money was domiciled in Afri-Exim Bank and was supposed to be taken out of the $50 billion that Russia had put forth for African countries to access. Hold a second. We started, of course, you were not a minister then, but the ministry existed.
I was a banker.
In an attempt to calm frayed nerves, committee chairman, Senator Patrick Nwabueze, announced plans for an immediate oversight visit to Ajaokuta and a further investigative hearing on the matter. But Senator Akpoti Udoha insisted on making additional comments and protested when she was not recognized to speak, leading to a heated exchange before she staged a walkout from the session.
The oversight we are talking about should not exceed this quarter, please. It shouldn't by any reason. Even if there is war going on in Ajaokuta, we want to be there. That's one. Two, we are not allowing minister to go when we are still sitting, but because we are in our own. You have been but because we are in our own house where we are sitting, so we might call it a day with the minister and we'll return the MD Ajokuta and National Iron Ore Mining, because we have to attend to you today. Thank you.
Something to say. You have that. Please, do you mind if I do so?
Distinguished, let us call it
No,
a
I'd
close
like
for
to,
the
please.
minister.
It's very important,
When
please.
we come for investigative
No,
hearing,
Honorable
we invite-
Minister, please, I'd like to
I
say
think,
this.
Mr. Minister.
No, please, do not
we
hit the
have-
gavel. I still have something to say, and I think you should respect me enough. Please don't do
I've
that.
given you respect.
No, that's
Mr.
not it.
Minister, your
Mr.
time
Chairman.
is up. Thank you.
Then that's fine.
You are,
That's okay.
you are
I
to
think
wait.
you've
Don't go with
disrespected me
me.
more than enough
No, no, no.
on this. No, you can't do this to me. You can't. You spoke
It's
about me
okay.
enough to allow me to speak. I have something very vital to interface with on the minister. And it doesn't matter if I've spoken once or twice. This is an interactive session. And you agree that we have not met with the minister enough. Only God knows when next we are going to meet with him as a committee.
Despite the tension, the committee proceeded with the budget defense of other agencies under the Ministry of Steel Development. Meanwhile, the federal government has set an ambitious economic target of 4.49% growth as the 2026 budget focuses on deepening reforms, expanding revenue and enforcing fiscal discipline. The Minister of State for Finance, Dr. Doris Uzoka Anite, disclosed this at the public hearing on the 2026 Appropriation Bill organized by the Senate Committee on Appropriations at the National Assembly. Uzoka Anite said the administration is moving beyond budget formulation to measurable outcomes, ensuring that limited national resources are deployed with maximum efficiency and impact. Looking ahead, she described 2026 as a year of consolidation with projections by the Ministry of Finance and the Central Bank of Nigeria anchored on improved revenue performance and stronger coordination between monetary and fiscal authorities. She also revealed that Nigeria's external reserves have risen above $40 billion, while enhanced revenue generation has boosted monthly VAT distributions to states, creating more fiscal space at the sub-national level.
The growth rate required to achieve a 1 trillion economy is at its minimum 10% in 10 years. And this is different from what I said earlier of 6 to 7%, which is only necessary to reduce the level of poverty in the country. And this brings me to the medium-term fiscal priorities.
On the legislative side, Deputy Senate President Senator Jibril Barrow, representing Senate President Godswill Akpabio, said the 2026 budget is not about spending more, but spending better, stressing that appropriations must translate into real impact for Nigerians.
Gains once observed. The difficulty lies not so much in developing new ideas as in escaping from old ones. Our task, therefore, is not simply to spend more, but to spend better.
Earlier, Chairman of the Senate Committee on Appropriations, Senator Solomon Adiola, outlined key budget assumptions, including an inflation target of 16.5%, an exchange rate of 1,400 naira to the dollar, oil production of 1.84 million barrels per day, and a benchmark oil price of $64.85 per barrel.
Inflation has eased to about 15%. Foreign reserve exceed $42 billion. The exchange rate has stabilized, and the downstream sector, petroleum sector, is fully market-driven.
The National Assembly has raised fresh concerns over declining budgetary allocations to Nigeria's agricultural sector, warning the funding could undermine food security and economic recovery. The alarm was sounded during a joint session of Senate and House Committees on Agricultural Production, Services and Rural Development, where the Federal Ministry of Agriculture and Food Security defended its 2026 budget proposal. Presenting the proposal, Minister of State for Agriculture and Food Security, Senator Aliyu Abdullahi, said government interventions are anchored on President Bola Tinubu's Food Security Emergency Declaration, with efforts focused on expanding production, strengthening value chains, and improving farmer resilience. However, he admitted that delayed capital releases under the 2025 budget have slowed program execution. About 30% of the ministry's capital allocation roughly 18 billion naira is yet to be released, limiting support for farmers nationwide.
If you ask me if we are satisfied with what we have, because it's a rollover, otherwise we have some very good projects we have started, which we will have loved to have funding for. And I believe the rollover is now a constraint for us because we will not be able to have additional funds for those.
Meanwhile, for 2026, the agricultural sector is projected to receive about 1 trillion naira, with 262 billion naira earmarked for capital expenditure within the ministry. Despite this, lawmakers expressed concern over what they describe as a sharp drop in overall allocation to the sector. Chairman of the House Committee on Agricultural Production, Bello Kaoje, noted that while total national expenditure is expected to rise to 58.47 trillion naira in 2026, agriculture's allocation declined from 2.22 trillion naira in 2025 to 1.45 trillion naira. Similarly, Senate Committee Chairman Senator Saliu Mustafa stressed that agriculture remains Nigeria's strongest pathway to poverty reduction and job creation, urging timely release of funds to stabilize the nation's food system.
I therefore recommend that the federal government should prioritize adequate budgetary allocation and prompt release of agricultural and sector funds, alongside strengthening implementation mechanism.
Lawmakers say the 2026 budget must be evidence-based, performance-driven, and aligned with national priorities to ensure improved food supply, farmer livelihoods, and sustainable economic growth. The Economic and Financial Crimes Commission, EFCC, says it has made significant progress in asset recovery and convictions, but it's grappling with funding pressures and rising operational costs fueled by increasing sophisticated financial crimes. The disclosure was made by the EFCC chairman Ola Olukoyede during the 2025 budget appraisal and 2026 budget defense session before the House of Representatives Committee on Financial Crimes, attended by the EFCC and the Nigerian Financial Intelligence Unit. Addressing members of the committee, Olukoyede attributed improved performance in recent years to sustained collaboration with the National Assembly, noting that legislative support had strengthened the Commission's capacity to deliver on its mandate. He also confirmed that the EFCC had submitted its 2024 annual report to the National Assembly, with the 2025 report expected by September. According to the EFCC boss, the nature of financial crimes has shifted rapidly to technology-driven fraud, forcing the Commission to invest heavily in digital forensics, cybercrime detection tools, and advanced investigative platforms. Moves, he said, have significantly increased operational expenses.
My challenge is money, money, money. I tell you, Mr. Chair, just this last week, we had cause to have a bill, an invoice for just one item in my forensic lab.
The Nigerian Financial Intelligence Unit also briefed lawmakers with its Director and Chief Executive Officer, Hafsat Bakari, highlighting Nigeria's exit from the Financial Action Task Force grey list and removal from the European Union's high-risk third country list.
I also want to inform this honorable committee that Nigeria has also exited the European Union's removal of Nigeria from the high-risk third country list for money laundering and terrorism finance. These milestones and achievements, coordinated by the NFIU, working with close partners like the EFCC and other stakeholders.
Earlier, Chairman of the House Committee on Financial Crimes, Ginger Onwusibi, described the budget appraisal as critical to Nigeria's economic stability and anti-corruption drive, stressing that effective oversight and adequate funding of anti-graft agencies remain essential to national development.
Nigerians are grappling with hardship, and there is a pressing need for effective solution.
The session underscores growing concerns over whether existing funding levels can keep pace with the evolving complexity of financial crimes, in Nigeria. Power project meant to boost electricity supply, agriculture, and flood control in Niger State has become the center of a fierce legal and policy battle pitching the federal government against a private power company at the National Assembly. The dispute over the proposed 360 megawatts Gwara 2 hydropower project was laid bare as both sides traded claims before the House of Representatives. The multi-purpose project located along the Pauli-Jere Junction, Koloniga, Kampechang, axis of Niger State is designed to deliver electricity, irrigation, flood control, fisheries, and tourism benefits within a federal irrigation corridor. At the hearing, the Federal Ministry of Water Resources and Sanitation, represented by its minister, Professor Joseph Utsev, told lawmakers that technical feasibility studies carried out as far back as 2010 informed a selective procurement process. According to the ministry, the project was duly awarded to CGC Nigeria Limited, insisting that Abuja Power Company Limited only surface after procurement had already been concluded.
Following studies were carried out on the proposed project in different lots. The first one was the geotechnical studies. The second was the environmental impact assessment studies, irrigation services studies, hydrological studies, topographical survey.
But the Abuja Power Company Limited strongly disputed that position, led by senior advocates Oluwemi Okumbi and company director Professor George Momen. The firm argued that it conceived the Gwara 2 project as early as 2004 and secured a certificate of occupancy.
CCOC/CGC Nigeria Limited for the development of the Gwara 2 multipurpose dam hydropower project contravenes the Public Procurement Act, the ICRC Act, and the regulations concerning unsolicited proposals.
Chairman of the House Committee handling the matter, Sada Soli, assured that all submissions and court documents would be carefully examined before any decision is taken.
Senate on the matter to enable the parties to sit down and look at the amicable way to resolve this matter in order to save this project in the interest.
Let's take a break here, and on the flip side, we'll bring you more unfolding at the National Assembly. Please stay with us. It's good to have you back on the Parliament. The Senate has expressed fresh concern over the persistent wave of terrorist attacks across the country, describing the nation's security situation as troubling. The alarm was raised during the 2026 Budget Defense and 2025 Budget Review of the Ministry of Defense. Lawmakers at the National Assembly pressed the Ministry of Defense for answers as insecurity continues to challenge several parts of the country. Chairman of the Senate Committee on Defense, Ahmed Lawan, said the budget defense was taking place at a difficult moment for Nigerians grappling with renewed attacks and loss of lives. The former president of the Senate described the security situation as worrisome and stressed the need for intensified efforts to curb terrorism and restore public confidence.
Our reality in the last 50 years has been that of battling terrorists and insurgents that have succeeded in carrying out kidnappings, mass abductions of communities and students, massacres, arson, and so on and so forth.
Responding, the Minister of Defense, Major General Christopher Musa, retired, acknowledged the ongoing security threats but assured the committee that military operations across the country remain active and strategic. He told lawmakers that troops are recording gains in various theaters of operation and reaffirmed the armed forces' commitment to defending Nigeria's territorial integrity and safeguarding citizens. From the public session, the committee moved into a closed-door meeting to deliberate on sensitive operational matters, project implementation and budgetary details presented by the ministry. The outcome of the deliberations is expected to shape defense funding priorities for the 2026 fiscal year. The Revenue Mobilization Allocation and Fiscal Commission says the long-awaited review of Nigeria's revenue allocation formula is nearing completion, following months of consultations and data analysis. This came as lawmakers scrutinized the 2026 budget proposals of key government agencies during a budget defense session at the National Assembly. Appearing before the House of Representatives Committee on Finance, Chairman of the Revenue Mobilization Allocation and Fiscal Commission, Dr. Mohammed Shehu, told lawmakers the commission had concluded its review of the remuneration of political office holders. He said the recommendations have been forwarded to the President through the Secretary to the government of the Federation. Dr. Shehu also disclosed that work on the vertical and horizontal revenue sharing formula is ongoing, with completion expected before the end of the year.
Remuneration of political office holders is completed. We have submitted through the SGF to Mr. President. We hope that very soon this thing will be transmitted to you so that it becomes law.
Meanwhile, the acting managing director of the Nigerian Bulk Electricity Trading PLC, MBET, Johnson Akinawu, attributed challenges in the company's 2025 budget implementation to low capital releases. But members of the committee raised concerns over MBET's spending priorities.
Every and all travels that you see that was funded there had either an SGF or head of service approval as required.
Out of 479 million naira, you spent 470 million for international travels. Why I'm worried about this expenditure is that you neglected the comfort of your residential building as against your international travel.
In a related presentation, the Federal Ministry of Finance proposed 14.3 billion naira 2026 budget also came under scrutiny over alleged inconsistency in its capital component. The Minister of Finance and Coordinating Minister of the Economy, Wale Edu, explained that the figure includes debt service items classified as capital expenditure by the Budget Office.
By Budget Office, they captured the debt servicing under that particular heading. So we would have to trace back as to why. So it is not part of our normal capital budget. It is actually debt servicing.
We're talking about revenue. We want to know the sources, what made up that revenue, and what as against what targets.
The House Committee on Finance subsequently directed the ministry to return with its complete 2025 budget performance report before consideration of the 2026 proposal. And that's the size of this edition of the program. We'll see you next time when we come on the Parliament. A quick reminder that Global Television is on DSTV channel 365 and StarTimes channel 276. To stay connected, kindly follow us across all social media platforms. Use it at Global TV NG. Thank you to my production team. Until we come your way the next time, I am Anieti Patrick. Bye for now.